The narrative of Star Wars' prequel trilogy focused heavily on how a democracy is corrupted from within to become an autocracy in what many will view as a tragic injustice. What if I were to tell you, though, that this establishment of a monarchy through the Galactic Empire was not only an inevitable path for the Star Wars galaxy, but indicative of our own species' inherent desires? To illustrate my point, we must look back at the statistics of our world, in which democracies are shown to be at their most effective within countries that are more stable, whereas autocrats are preferred in countries with civil unrest, in which a single decision from the top will respond to far more frequent threats faster than the democratic system. Something proven through history with dictatorships such as the NSDAP or DPRK gaining power through the political and social instabilities within their respective countries. Knowing this makes it obvious why the invasion of Naboo was crucial for Palpatine's political rise, and the Clone Wars planted the seeds for those in the Senate wanting autocracy. On the subject of the Clone Wars, how the series with that title portrays the fall of the Republic further adds to parallels of the real world, with many neutral worlds being forced to pick a side, and those of separatist worlds being seen as ones in need of liberation by the average citizen regardless of how stable their own governance is, much as many countries see democracy as an ideal worth their or their opponents' lives to uphold, rather than being the means to an end that all political systems are. Though the actions of the separatist leaders are indeed deplorable, these are ultimately the actions of a puppet master controlling both sides, whereas the altruistic amongst them are stamped out when becoming too vocal. An important reminder of how much freedom of choice is rarely available today. Padme's character is notable as a tragic one for her desire to improve a political system that is too far gone, and an accurate tale of those in real life, in which political systems that are rotten at their core seldom rise to strength again, and most exceptions were from a united leader revolutionizing aspects of it. To an extent, Padme also represents the true idea of what a democracy or Socratic democracy is, as a system in which those educated enough to make responsible decisions are given the right to vote, with Padme using her intelligence and strength of character to give the disenfranchised a voice in the Senate through her speeches, as opposed to Palpatine's sway showcasing the truth of how what we think of as democracies today are closer to oligarchies in which the reach of those with political sway influence the uneducated masses to make the vote of one knowledgeable on the issues at hand worthless compared to a horde of the uneducated. This desire for autocracy is not only shown in Disney's continuity, as poorly as it may be, with the First Order having the room to become a resurgent faction from the New Republic's incompetence, but the downfall of the New Republic within Legends too, in which unstable leadership causes the New Republic to fracture until reaching the Legacy era, in which the major factions are all either monarchies or constitutional autocracies, whereas the Alliance that once housed the Republic is reduced to a comparatively small and irrelevant institute. This is comparable to the path taken in 3 other science fiction series. First, befitting one of the works that inspired Star Wars, Dune presents the return of more traditionalist and authoritarian ideas as an inevitability, despite Frank Herbert's own desires for Enlightenment-era ideals, as the conclusion made on his observation of society at the time. Herbert's observations are quite accurate to what we are seeing today, in which many so-called democracies are on the decline after several centuries, with none having the staying power of such monarchies as any iteration of the Roman Empire, or the many dynasties of Chinese emperors. There's also the comparison of many similar geographical spots in which monarchies endured better than democracies, such as Muslim countries after the Arab Spring. Another is Gundam's Universal Century, in which, despite the victories of the Earth Federation keeping their democracy afloat, the continuing rise of successors to Zeon, as well as the inner corruption of the Federation through the Titans, shows both the desire for autocratic institutes and the ease of corruption within democratic ones. The former point is best displayed through both how quickly Haman gained political influence on Earth and the public unsurfacing of the Titans' atrocities preceding it, as well as how Char's Neo-Zeon inspired such a following that even the plans to destroy Earth didn't weaken his faction internally. Of course, Zeon shows the elephant in the room of how an authoritarian dictator can easily become a tyrant if unworthy of the responsibility, which is where we bring in a final example of this point. With a series that took some light inspiration from Star Wars and Gundam's political conflict, with a pinch of Dune's philosophy, and with even greater helpings of what we can call epic realism. Legend of the Galactic Heroes, Ginga Eio Densetsu, or Gineiden for short, is the one work that I can confidently cite as the pinnacle of the anime medium. There are many reasons for this, but the one relevant to this video is its boldness in going against the modern narrative of autocracies, and fully exploring both sides to autocracies and democracies. Though the Galactic Empire at the start of the series embodies the typical narrative of an autocracy under the command of an incompetent emperor, and being puppeteered by corrupt nobles, we see how effective such a political system can be once the protagonist Reinhard von Lohengramm achieves his goal and is able to govern the Empire upon the right track. Meanwhile, the corruptions within the Free Planets Alliance leads to them undermining the one person who could act as a foil to Reinhard, before its leadership starts to either collapse, submit to the Empire, or break away from a dying system. Much as with Star Wars' Galactic Empire, that within Gineiden came to be from the desires of the people for a united leader, and the FPA could only emerge as a reaction to the Empire, much as almost all of what we view as democracies today came about through violent conflicts, with the exceptions such as the Republic of Venice not fitting the mold, with that example in particular being the Maritime Republic. Perhaps the most important scene in highlighting the series' nuanced and honest look at these contrasting political systems is when Reinhard and Jan Wenli meet, with both giving contrasting reasons for their political stances. Despite the masterful character writing of the scene, there's one flaw to Jan's position that the power to make or break one society is the choice of the people, in that the federal democracy he follows is also one that undermines the rights of the people, as with the undermining of Jessica's criticisms of Trunhit. More importantly, it raises the question of how far or wide the concept of the people who choose to go with the standard, still limiting the vote in some way, and the blame of a poor leader lying with the people, simply creating a system of one leader being replaced with another after a time limit, in which they will simply move the goalposts of blame. The tragedy of Jan's view on democracy is that his argumentation is perfectly sound insofar as people act perfectly within the system, in an overly idealistic take on politics. Meanwhile, Reinhard's leadership shows the strength of an authoritarian system, and even the internal conflicts that emerge within the Empire are brought about in spite of him, rather than because of him, due to several character conflicts reaching a boiling point, or from outside forces infiltrating it. Of all the examples I've given, Legend of the Galactic Heroes has the most nuanced take on monarchies and similar systems, in that a tyranny can bring about the worst type of leadership, but that a monarch who walks the path of improving their civilization and establishing a solid framework for successors, avoiding the system's pitfalls, can bring about the best choice for humanity. With all these science fiction, or science fantasy in Star Wars' case, showing how well the genre can have enough freedom to explore such important topics. Thank you for having listened through my analysis. If wanting to see more to do with Star Wars, I have a playlist here. This also isn't the first time I've talked of Legend of the Galactic Heroes, so if interested in seeing that, or having an interest in historical manga, and not minding the worse audio quality of my older videos, check out my appraisal of Ad Astra, Scipio and Hannibal.